The Sabrael Confession, The Heavenly War Chronicles, Book 1, by Stephen Smith. Chapter 11. In the shadow of the Temple Mount, Helena whisked me back to the bustling marketplace. She sprinted ahead through the crowd as soon as she spotted Theocritus, and he turned just in time as she flew into his arms. Like a young girl, she explained everything in an excited rant. Theocritus clasped my forearm when I caught up, but his smile faded when I offered to carry some of their newly purchased clothes. Lord Aegeus, no. What kind of master carries his servants' clothing? I reiterated that their servitude was just an act for those within the palace, but he insisted, "You have given us these clothes, this opportunity. For that alone I would serve you, act or no." Thus it was that the Athenian Aegeus and his two surviving servants arrived at the palace carrying only a bundle of clothes and three magnificent drawings. Irenaeus wasn't pleased. "I thought all your servants were slain." He stood blocking the entrance to my building, as though he'd been awaiting my return. "You never asked if I had contacts here in the city." His eyes passed over Helena, inspecting every inch, some more than others. Then they narrowed on Theocritus. "Where have I seen you before, servant?" Theocritus said nothing. "I had you removed from the palace grounds weeks ago for trespassing." "What trickery is this, aristocrat, inviting the poor into our home?" Before I could reply, Theocritus interjected, "Your memory is sharp, Lord. We did meet then. However, I only came to inform the court of my master's imminent arrival. Had you allowed me to speak, surely all this confusion might have been avoided." I was shocked at Theocritus's mastery of Aramaic. He only spoke Greek to me. Irenaeus's lips tightened. "Such a loose tongue reflects poorly on your master." "A servant's tongue should be free to defend his master," I said. "Surely you agree?" "No one has ever been so bold as to disgrace me in front of my servants." Theocritus muttered, "Something I can fix quick enough." Helena patted his hand and frowned, though I could see the laughter in her eyes. Thankfully, Irenaeus didn't hear him. "Very well, you want to bring the filth of the city into this palace. I leave you to it. But when you wake to find the little you have has gone missing, do not cry to the court." He flicked his fingers, beckoning me. "A moment, aristocrat, away from the prying ears." Giving Theocritus and Helena a reassuring nod, I followed Irenaeus through the gardens. Since your arrival, I have been fondly distracted by memories of our dear Athens, the places I once lived, the city's glorious history, but more than that, my thoughts dwell on the people there. I was not sure why, but today I had a revelation. You see, I was quite familiar with the noble families before my duties brought me here, yet I do not recall your face, or even your name." He paused and stared at me. "Strange, I think, that Caesar would send Athenians here as new emissaries. I should think he would prefer to favor those of Roman blood." Trying to mask my nervousness, I said, "If that were the case, would Caesar not also seek to replace representatives to such a fine city as this? with more trustworthy Roman advisors? Irenaeus's gaze turned cold. You may fool that imbecile Corinthus, and the king may be blind to your lies, but do not think me so easily misled. Take great care in your actions here. I will be watching. His robe swept over the dirt and he disappeared into his own building. Is something wrong? Helena asked when I returned to them. Should we leave? I smiled at her. He is only wary of those new to the palace. Nothing to worry about. Though this answer satisfied her, Irenaeus' suspicions didn't sit well with me. I had no guarantee the man wouldn't become a problem I must handle in time. My new companions couldn't believe their eyes when we arrived in the apartment. Helena wasted no time getting comfortable. She leapt onto the bed almost before her feet touched the floor. Our entire house could fit on this bed. Theocritus examined the indoor lavatory. Just before we left Athens, the aqueducts were being routed into wealthier homes. Ours may have been ours may have had access in time. He trailed off. Seating myself at the table, I asked, why did you leave Greece? The hulking Athenian sat facing me. For many years, my family enjoyed wealth from our trade in spices and fine silks by way of an easterly road through Jerusalem. Under the rule of the Romans, everything changed. My grandfather did not support Caesar's reign, and when the Praetorian discovered this, they came for him. Theocritus stared at his folded hands. He was asleep in his bed when the torches crashed through the windows, the spark of disloyalty extinguished by flame. But customary to Roman practice, the families of known traitors are also to be executed. My father, knowing this, was certain we would be next. I thought it foolish to worry. I was the fool. Helena and I had just been wed, having spent only 3 nights together, when the Praetorian came for my father. The three of us hid as they shouted and pounded on his front door. I begged him to speak to the soldiers, to swear our allegiance to Caesar, but he knew it was too late. He thrust into my hand a large sum of money he had collected since my grandfather's death and bid me escape to Jerusalem. Helena and I could take refuge with my grandfather's brother, who assisted my family's trade officials. I refused to run, swore that I would stay and fight. He just grabbed me with a strength I thought had left him long ago and forced us out the back door, bolting it behind us. I beat on that door until my fists painted it red, but the Praetorian were in the house then. I could hear my father proclaiming his loyalty, showing his titles to prove himself a respectable citizen. Then his cries were silenced. Helena pulled me away, and from the edge of our land, I watched the Praetorian emerge from the house with bloodied swords. They set fire to it, consuming my father in flames just as his father before him. I yearned for revenge, but refused to be the third member of my family slain by the emperor's soldiers. So Helena and I fled that night on a merchant ship headed for Jerusalem. We searched for my grandfather's brother, but found he had perished in the Parthian invasion. His daughters were both married off. No one of my bloodline was left in the city. With the little money we had left, we bought a home in the Weaver district and clothes that would last. And ever since we have been struggling, nowhere else in the world to go. Helena put her hands on his shoulders. She said, "It's a miracle you found us when you did. The tax collector's next visit would have seen us sold as slaves. If only they knew how miraculous my arrival really was. As long as I am here, you are my welcome guests, and I promise I will not leave without first ensuring you will be cared for." "Thank you, Lord Aegeus, for all you have done," Theocritus said. "Please, I ask that you not call me Lord any longer, only Aegeus. You are not my servants, you are my guests. There is but one Lord, and under him we are all equal." Theocritus looked up at Helena and then back at me. "You are a Jew as well? Truly, you are a blessing sent to us from God." Later, as the sun headed for the horizon, and the land darkened beneath a blanket of rust, Theocritus and Helena sat in new clothes, fresh from the bathhouse. Though relegated to servants' robes outside the apartment, behind closed doors they could wear anything they desired. I felt it necessary to tell my friends about the strange behaviors they would no doubt observe in the coming days, for I couldn't risk them accidentally compromising me. I explained that certain matters would often keep me from the apartment, both day and night. They were never to ask about these affairs nor question others about my whereabouts. There would be money for them every day, and though they had their own quarters, my apartment would always be open. They asked me nothing after this, and were delighted I offered them my apartment as their own, though on the first night Theocritus informed me they would like to spend a night alone in our own room, if you would not mind. The three of us spent much of the next few days together. Though I wished they would regard me as a friend, the kindnesses I'd shown them seemed to have instilled a persistent reverence. I was just thrilled they were free of the trials they'd endured. Why such kind people would have been put to death over something as trivial as money was beyond me. How could it hold such importance when each morning I just created new coins out of nothing? My days in the palace were spent ingratiating myself with the court members, though Irenaeus remained impossible to please. Ever more comfortable speaking to these men, I was fast becoming a familiar, trusted face. I dined with them, walked with them, and spent every moment of daylight acting out my ruse. My nights, however, were reserved for exploring the grounds in the spiritual plane. In the dark hours, I snuck into forbidden areas to observe the king's late night meetings and learn secrets never uttered in the light. Theocritus and Helena said nothing of my frequent nights out, save Helena occasionally asking if I was getting enough sleep. They didn't know that on the nights I stayed in the room, it wasn't to sleep but to ponder the day's findings. How could I tell them sleep was as useless to me as food or air? To my companions, I was simply a busy emissary, dealing in matters of politics and other things they need not care about. Though I trusted them implicitly, I heeded Michael's warning and continued to perpetuate the role of Aegeus, never mentioning the name Sabrael, and keeping my true identity locked deep inside. I'd been in Jerusalem for some weeks before the reason for my being there came to light. The rainy season had come and gone, with the trade routes no longer dangerous. Tens of thousands of visitors flocked to the city. The streets were soon so packed there was hardly room to walk, and the sands outside the city walls filled with tents to house house the overflow of travelers. Herod's court was in good spirits, their coffers once again filled with currency from across the world. I even heard Herod plan to construct more theaters and build a new district to encourage some of the tourists to stay. Helena was especially welcoming of the constant stream of strangers finding their way into the lower city markets. More people means more work for those in need, she said. It was the temple, though, not the markets, that was the focal point for this influx of visitors. If one deed set Herod apart from the kings before and after him, it was the construction of this shimmering marvel. The temple comprised five main areas called courts, each separated from the next by gates of gold or silver. Only one was made of bronze, but was polished so well one would it, swear it to be gold, with its stonework cut from marble and precious decorations adorning every alcove. The entire structure shined as though it housed the sun itself. It was the radiant centerpiece of Herod's golden city. I wondered how much mind he paid to the fact that the building was supposed to be in the Almighty's honor, not his own. Imagine my shock then when I learned that only select people were permitted within this architectural miracle. Upon reaching the summit of the Temple Mount, one found himself in a massive portico, the Court of Gentiles. This wasn't so much a worship area as a bazaar, full of money changers and vendors who sold souvenirs and sacrificial animals. Colonnaded porches lined its perimeter on three sides, priests, masons, working hard to expand the western side of the mount. And at its southern end stood the royal stoa, a covered shelter from the sweltering heat and rainy season held aloft by brilliant white marble pillars. The Court of Gentiles was the only area open to all visitors. A 5 foot high wall blocking off the remainder of the courts from non Jews. Stone tablets affixed to pillars spaced along the wall proclaimed in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew that any uncircumcised man crossing the wall faced penalties. Up a few stairs and through an incredible bronze gate called the Nicanor Gate was the Court of Women, where Jewish women could leave offerings and hear sermons. The Court of Israel was next, where Jewish men offered their sacrifices and praise around the even higher court of priests. Here, priests burned the offerings of Jewish citizens on a massive altar, visible from all the way back to the court of Gentiles. All of these areas formed a stairway to the heart of the temple. The sanctuary, an enclosed building accessible only to priests. The sanctuary was divided into two areas, the Hakal, which contained the most holy relics of Judaism, and the Davir, hidden behind a heavy curtain embroidered with a map of the entire known world, built to house the presence of God Himself. Absolutely no one was allowed in the Davir except the high priest, and he only on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. The entire structure was meant to be a physical and spiritual ascension to the presence of the Almighty and the single destination for nearly all the city's visitors. With the huge numbers of people traveling to visit the temple, it soon became nearly impossible for the three of us to navigate the madness to perform our daily worship. Theocritus and Helena finally gave up trying, but I continued to fight each day. It was during one of these battles to the temple's gates that I was first discovered. The main route by which most citizens entered the temple was through a pair of gates in the lower city called the Hulda Gates. On the southern side of the Temple Mount, these twin gates fed into stairways that led up into the court of Gentiles. On this particular day, the gates were clogged with waiting worshippers. There was no way I would reach the court of Israel by sundown. Not even my status as royal guest would help me. Frustrated, I looked to the winding stairway at the southwest corner of the mount, which led up to another, smaller entry, but this too was packed. There was only one other route available. I turned and ran through the street of the Weaver district and back up into the upper city, spanning high over the tidal Oyam Valley, or spanning high over the tidal Payan Valley. A long bridge connected the upper city to the Temple Mount. I'd never used this bridge before, but it was a popular avenue for those who shunned the valley floor. As I approached the bridge, my hopes were answered. It wasn't nearly as crowded as the Holda gates below. I crossed the upper city of Z- Zeistus Market and came to the back of a mercifully short line. After only a few moments, a hand touched my shoulder. Half expecting to find Theocritus behind me, I turned and found it to be an elderly beggar. His clothes ragged and soiled, the stench of him was unconscionable. "Forgive me, Lord, but would you be so kind as to help a man in need?" he asked with a raspy voice. Impressed at his audacity in coming up from the lower city, I gladly reached into my pouch. He took one look at the money I offered and slapped my hand away. The coins clinked over the lips of the bridge. I was so startled I almost fell with them. "I do not want money." "What is money?" I asked for assistance. "Old man," I said, "I came here to worship the Almighty God, and while I will be glad to help you, I would have my time with Him first." He smiled a toothless grin. "Perhaps an old friend can persuade you to change your mind." From beneath his hood, his hair suddenly grew to his chest and turned silver. His eyes burned gray. "Michael," I gasped. And instantly his appearance was that of the old man again, his hair turning to dust and sifting away in the breeze. He blinked and his eyes were human once more. "Follow me," he said. He led me along a winding path through the upper city. Each time I tried to speak, Michael quieted me without stopping. He walked with the help of a mangled cane, and I wondered if he was required to perform this disability every day. I silently shouted my joy that we were together again, and in a few moments I heard his voice in my mind telling me to quiet down. I didn't care. This was the first time since my becoming human that I could speak freely. He soon led me into an alley shaded from the sun. No one was around in any direction. "Of course, no one is around. The smell keeps them away," he said. I laughed and he asked, "How are you, Sabrael? It seems like it's been so long." "Everything has gone smoothly in the palace. I'm on good terms with many of the king's men and even hold the status of Herod's personal guest." "Well done," he smiled a grin of gums, and I laughed. "Like the disguise?" If the others could see their mighty leader now. His smile broadened. "How are the others? Have you visited them?" Michael scratched his face. Dirty fingernails dislodged flecks of crusted skin. "They are well. Thus far there have been no confrontations with the fallen, though Hanel believes at least 4 dwell near Cana." "What of the son?" I asked. "When is he coming?" "Before I get to that, have you observed any of the fallen here in the city?" "None that I know of, but the crowd is so big these days, I doubt I would see them." "You would see their wings in the spiritual plane," he pointed out. The heat of embarrassment rose in my cheeks. "I should have thought of that," Michael continued. "You must take great care, for they can see you the same way. From now on, be mindful of this and observe the crowds in the spiritual plane before entering any place where the fallen might lurk." "You make it sound like they are close." Michael nodded. "If the fallen are not already here, I am sure they will be very soon. The son will be born in but a few days." "The son will be born in Jerusalem?" I asked, unable to hide my excitement. "Not here, but nearby. Once he arrives, I expect the fallen will flock to this entire region, and we must be ready to defend him. If any of us calls for you, you must be prepared to drop everything and fly there right away." I nodded, preoccupied by my excitement. Finally, we would be by his side as he grew up, serving and keeping him safe until the day he would fulfill the prophecies. "No," Michael said, "when the son arrives, we are to remain in our positions. Each of us has been assigned a crucial place, and the day will come when all our roles become clear. Then we will not be able to witness his birth." "Of course you can. I would be surprised at any angel who did not praise the coming of Christ. But after that you must return here to monitor Herod's court. News will travel fast, and all the news passes through them. I do not want any surprises. Won't he know who we are if he sees us?" "I thought we were to avoid direct contact." "The baby he has become will not recognize us, or remember anything of heaven." For the first time, the notion of all this made me sad. I didn't know how I would be able to be near him and never tell him who he truly was. "How will I know where to find him?" Michael replied. "When the time comes, you'll know. Worry instead about any changes in the palace once he is here. Things may get very different all too quickly. Whatever happens, I have it in control, I said. He nodded. I have to get back, but remember my words. If you need us, cry out in the spiritual plane and we will quickly be at your side. Michael embraced me tight. I could feel the bones beneath his papery skin. Then, in a swirl of flying matter, he was gone.